Good morning. How are you guys?
If you want to. You know, it's getting louder and louder every Sunday. Getting out of hand, Alan. What are you going to do?
I have a desk stand coming. It's a really nice system. Have you tried it? Oh, you were here when we set it up.
Oh, yeah.
Did you go and teach on a DTS last week?
Yeah, well, no, at SOSM.
SOSM, with Ron Moyle?
Yeah.
What did you teach on?
I was doing inductive Bible study.
That's up your alley.
And then I'm speaking this week at the Axia training.
Oh, wonderful, Tyler.
On how to share the gospel.
Good. Excellent.
And I mean, I was so upset if Jim's whatever it is, it's just so, I can't believe you're so angry. And I said, well, that hurts so hard. But anyway, I found them on OneDrive.
I've got to rat somebody out.
So, anyway, when he
stay awake from all drive.
it was on C, it was on C. I don't remember the first thing. If you have time,
All right, it's time for us to
we'll go
begin.
through it again. But I didn't lose it. So, but I was really scared.
We're ready to start. All right, let's everybody just have a seat. We'll get started. Today we're going to be in Proverbs chapter 4. If you want to open up there. Proverbs chapter 4. So let's open with a word of prayer. We'll begin. Dear God, we thank you for the chance to gather together today. Lord, we pray for your blessing to be upon us. Lord, we pray that you would open our eyes so that we would see wonderful things in your word. And Lord, help us to not only see them, but to apply them in our own hearts, minds, and lives, that we might become wiser people in this world. And we pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, so we are kind of once again coming back to the theme of it is so important to gain wisdom. And, I was just listening on the way here to a podcast that was just talking about the incredible levels of depression and anxiety among teenagers and young people. and how, I mean, you know, it's one of those things where the studies are pretty clear that it's being caused by social media and the internet at large. That exposure to the internet, exposure to a lot of things that young people are just not emotionally prepared for is overwhelming. It's particularly bad for young ladies for a lot of different reasons, body image issues and things like that, and the level of bullying and the level of crude and rude comments, social media, and if you have kept up with the news, you'll know that last week a teenager at Lindale High School committed suicide. And in fact, had lunch this week with a couple of people out at the YWAM base, and their kids knew this young man. And so it's, you know, these are at epidemic level kind of things. They're you know, massive scale kind of things. And part of the struggle is that we just don't have the wisdom. You know, I mean, we unleashed this phenomenal tool called the internet that connected people in ways, I mean, you know, there have been incredible benefits in my life, people that I would have never had any contact with, that I have contact with through Facebook. You know, I can keep up and see family members that I don't get to see a lot, see pictures and stuff like that. So there's been some incredible benefits, the level of research that you can do, you know, whether it's, you know, finding out what color a bluebird's eyes are, I guess, that sort of thing, or you know, something much more significant, you know, doing some serious research, all is available to you. But we just don't have the wisdom to use these things wisely. And so that to me, it makes it particularly poignant as we look at this first part of Proverbs 4, that it's written from a father to his son. So I just want you to hear, we're going to read the first 9 verses, and I just want you to hear it in light of this reality of what's going on in our world, especially among our young people right now. It says, "Listen, my sons, to a father's instruction. Pay attention and gain understanding. I give you sound learning, so do not forsake my teaching. For I too was a son to my father, still tender and cherished by my mother. Then he taught me, and he said to me, take hold of my words with all your heart. Keep my commands, and you will live. Get wisdom, get understanding. Do not forget my words or turn away from them. Do not forsake wisdom, and she will protect you. Love her, and she will watch over you. The beginning of wisdom is this: get wisdom. Though it cost you all you have, get understanding. Cherish her, and she will exalt you. Embrace her, and she will honor you. She will give you a garland to grace your head and present you with a glorious crown." Now, why would stuff like, so this is old stuff here, right? You know, this was written a long time ago, but you kind of see the relevance, the immediate relevance. You know, I mean, I almost want to say, you know, the thing about the internet, it is basically a way to get knowledge, but not understanding. Like, I'm not even sure you can get, I mean, okay, I do recognize you can do things like look up Bible verses on the internet. But I'm saying, in terms of what the internet is, it is not a way to convey wisdom. Now, my question to you is, if this dad is saying to his sons, get wisdom, how do you do that? That's my question to you. Yes?
I mean, I think just based off of the prior things that he said too, I think he's, given the context, he's also saying, get wisdom by doing what I've previously told you, right? Like, look to the Lord, take the knowledge that you're given, and apply it, and follow these teachings.
Yeah.
I think that's the only way we truly receive wisdom, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
granted, I'm not one to talk, but still.
No, you are one to talk. We are all, I think that's the key issue is that this is not, wisdom is not intended to be expert level stuff. It is intended to be at the level of all of us dealing with this. So I think, yeah, that's good. What else? How do you get wisdom?
Experience.
Okay, going through things. And I would almost say just going through them is not a guarantee of wisdom. You have to reflect on them.
What about prayer?
Through prayer? Good, good.
Three things I've heard is that the smart person learns from others, the average person learns by his own mistakes, and the fool never learns, so.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm going to talk to your parents.
Yeah. And you could broaden that out even to talk to It's okay. It's almost like she was looking at my grandparents. But, you know, think of it in terms of people who have already gone through things, people who already have wisdom. And this is like, I think this is the big thing. So notice what this father says to his son. He says, okay, son, listen to what I'm telling you. Keep this stuff in your heart. Keep it in your mind. Live by it. Then he says, I was a child just like you. I was a son to my father. And my father said, get wisdom. And so think of it this way. It's at this point we're talking about a grandparent to a parent to a child. And this is the tradition of wisdom. Like there is a long, I mean, part of what's going on in this, you understand, like, Proverbs is not one of those books where somebody sat down and just started writing these things out, you know, and got to the, you know, chapter 31 and said, all right, that's pretty good. Let's just, you know, send it to the publisher. These are sayings that developed over a long period of time, and eventually somebody said, you know, we ought to collect all these together in one place so that it becomes a tradition of wisdom. And one of the places, you know, like one of the places you go to get wisdom is this place. Letting these things, I mean, I still like the old analogy that Proverbs is like hard candy. You know, you can't just chew it up and swallow it. You just got to suck on it. You got to keep it in your mouth for a while. You got to keep it in your heart for a while. And, you know, even last night, you know, Beth and I were talking about, there's that, you know, the proverb, I think it's the funniest one that says, don't answer a fool according to his folly or you'll become like him. And the next verse is, do answer a fool according to his folly or he'll be wise in his own eyes. And you're like, okay, so which is it? And the reality is that's one of those you sort of, and we were just talking about a situation last night and I said, you know, I think this is one of those situations where it's probably not good to answer a fool according to their folly because I think it's just going to end badly. And that's part of what's going on, right? You just sort of start to live with this stuff until it gets into your heart.
It seems that this generation of parents feel that the sports and other things are more important than church because we're not seeing the kids in church. Yeah. And they're following people at school that they think are better than them. And they feel like, you know, that there's nothing for them.
Yeah.
Which is so sad.
Yeah. The guy I was listening to actually made a comment that, you know, really challenging the idea, is it really healthy to just gather all the 14-year-olds in one place for, you know, 6 or 7 hours a day? Don't they need exposure to other generations and younger and older? And, you know, we just tend to do that. We tend to just isolate ourselves because we're most comfortable with people who are like us. I mean, this is one of the challenges for this church. You know, we have to learn to be comfortable with people who are not different ages, you know, different backgrounds, because what binds us together is not our likeness, but Jesus Christ. And so, you know, it's for us, I know that some of you are quite a bit older, but we're still striving to grow in wisdom. We have to keep striving to grow in wisdom. I think probably the person who is most in danger of being a fool is the person who thinks they're already wise. And so part of being wise is knowing in your heart that you have not fully attained wisdom. So you're still growing and learning. I love the phrase, though it costs you all you have, get wisdom, get understanding, get wisdom. That's pretty, I just want you to think about, what would you pay anything for? What would you pay anything for? Your health? Feels like you do, you know, you go see a doctor and they send you the bill and you're like, this is all I have, you know, so I mean, I'm paying everything I have to stay in good health. Do we really believe that getting wisdom is worth spending everything you have?
Yes.
You know, what would you spend? You know, I'm not talking financially. A lot of the thing about wisdom is it's not a financial thing. It's usually a time thing. How much time would you devote to gaining wisdom in your life? Yes.
The older I got, the smarter my daddy became.
Yeah.
I know that's just annoying.
I just miss the times that we had together.
Yeah.
Because he was just not talking about it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One of the things I always hated was my grandparents were not big talkers. Well, at least on my dad's side. And, you know, my grandfather on my dad's side was born in 1901. And they always told me things like their first date was in a horse and buggy, you know. So I always try to get them to, like, tell me, you know, what was it like growing up in the early 1900s? And they just weren't the kind of people who talked about themselves.
My dad was born in 1901.
Yeah, that's my granddad was. Yeah, 1901 was. So, you know, just stuff like just to be willing to learn from those people.
Because of the pandemic, there were a lot of problems with children, and their self-help was not there. And I can't remember what program it was that I saw this week, and they had children of the same, pretty much the same age. And one was from Mississippi, and one group was from Chicago, and they put two of them together that were opposite, and they had to tell about what they, you know, if they lost a parent and how it felt, and they had to listen to that person tell about their sorrows, and then that other person had to tell it like it was theirs, like it was their journey. And I thought that was so neat, because most of the time we don't listen, we talk.
Oh, yeah.
Instead of listening to the person that's hurting. And that was teaching them a lot of things.
Yeah.
I thought that was really a neat thing to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is just going back to your original point, and kind of the start of the study is when it comes to the internet and things are happening with kids and suicide rates. I started volunteering in a middle school to help out my community, and so one of the biggest parts of that is to mentor these kids, and I first started with one kid, now I've got 3, right? And the biggest thing, the commonality I've noticed since I've talked to the other kids that are there too, is that they are seeking wisdom. The problem is they're over, like the world now, because we have access to it at our fingertips, is almost overflowing with what feels like people who will tout themselves as having wisdom, or will put themselves in a position where these kids can look up to them. And then what ends up happening is they're essentially just, charlatans, right? Where they're not leading them towards wisdom, they're just leading them towards a path of self-destruction. These kids don't know any better.
Yeah.
And so my question is how to teach, along with wisdom, discernment for a mind that young. How do you, I feel like to know where to go, who to trust, looking back to whenever I was a kid, is I didn't know. I thought every adult had the truth, I thought every adult was trying to lead me the right way. So, look at one time I went into my little like show and tell thing for school because my crazy Uncle Brian told me the moon landing was fake. Right now, it's like, I'm gonna tell this whole school the truth because I thought he was right,
Yeah.
So,
Well, and that's the very nature, Proverbs talks a lot about children, and the word that it uses is simple. And simple does not mean stupid. Simple just means naive. You just haven't learned yet. So the way this works, it seems to me, is for years and years and thousands of years, it was recognized that the way that you gained wisdom and knowledge was to connect yourself to someone who was older. And not just because they were old. Like if you wanted to be a blacksmith, then you apprenticed with another blacksmith who had been doing it for years and years, and they taught you all the things, probably kept you from burning your fingers off and all that kind of stuff. But that was how you gained knowledge, experience, and wisdom. And going all the way back to ancient Greece, when you look at, for instance, Socrates. Plato was a disciple of Socrates. He intentionally associated himself with him so that he could learn wisdom. Now, you see that what we have built in our culture right now is almost totally devoted to connecting yourself to people who are just like you. Which is just, it's a recipe for not gaining wisdom. And it's built in, the dilemma is it's so baked into our culture right now. If you watch almost any movie, especially any movie that's supposed to be funny, whoever is the star of the show, every other generation will be perceived as dumb and stupid. If the star is a young person, all older people are clueless. If the star is an older person, they're making fun of young people. Like there's such the political separation in this country and the racial separation in this country are all issues, but it is just as much an issue, the separation between generations. That, older people feel like I just cannot relate to younger people, and younger people feel like I can't relate to older people.
Going to Mike's question, I used to work in retail management, and we had to learn how to identify a counterfeit bill, and like a lot of times it's like do your little marker, you have your little black light or whatever, but really the best way they were saying is like in banks, for instance, they teach them what the real money looks like, feels like, and all that stuff. And honestly, after handling money all day, you can feel it just on your fingertips when you touch a counterfeit bill. And so I think that goes for this discernment thing too. Like I think if you can expose children to the truth, like take them to church or take them to Bible study, the more they're exposed to stuff that is true, the more they will readily recognize it when someone's just feeding them untruth. You know what I mean? So I think that's, and a lot of kids aren't exposed to truth now, and there is so much information out there that pretends to be true, you know, like puts itself out there as truth. But I think as a mentor, for instance, like if you can expose them to as much truth from scripture as possible that you know is foundational, then that helps them like sense that little red flag when they hear something that's totally off, you know, because they've heard stuff that is true and from someone that they can rely on, like yourself.
I think my challenge has been how to do that in such a way where I'm basically like a spy for Jesus. because I can't reveal, for instance, or just like start giving scriptures. So I've had to just kind of give it almost like from, you know how they tell you not to what do you call it, plagiarize things in school. So instead of just giving straight scripture, I just make it my own words, right? That's what I'm having to do. So what I found was, like, for instance, there was a pastor that came in that just wanted to help the kids in the community. They kicked him out because they found out he was a pastor. So it's like the world is frowning upon, right? Us trying to show kids the truth, but they're like bragging about leading them astray and increasing the suicide rate on their own. You know, like, we've got the highest suicide rate among pre-13-year-olds right now that we've ever had in the history of America. Yeah. It's just, I don't know. So that's all I was asking you is, how do I teach them that, you know?
Well, so the biggest thing is you're already doing, and that's what I'm getting at, is this whole, you know, with Socrates and Plato, the only way to overcome this is through association. The only way to become wise, well, I shouldn't say the only way. The ideal way to become wise is through association with wise people. And that's what this, you know, in this passage, this dad is saying to his son, okay, my dad was wise. I spent time with him and he poured into me. Now I'm saying to you, I have become wise. Let me pour into your life. And so that's the ideal when it's passed through parents, through their instruction. When that doesn't happen, you have, once you're an adult and once you've grown up, you have a moral responsibility. If you didn't have a parent that poured that wisdom into your life, you've got to get it yourself. Because the key aspect of this, there is no internet program that's going to make young people wise. It has to be wise adults speaking into the lives of young people. And so, you know, whether it's in the church, again, this is part of the dilemma that we're facing is not only have we built a culture this way, but we've built a church that says really there's only one wise person in the church, and that's the pastor. He does the teaching. He does he knows all the stuff. If you have any questions, go see the pastor. You'll notice I'm trying to do this a little bit more in saying if I'm saying in the invitation, hey, if you're here and you're not a Christian, like I only do the invitation because this church wants me to. What my typical thing is, I will say, if you're not a Christian, turn to the person next to you and ask them about Christianity. That's where we should be. It shouldn't be, oh, you need to go talk to the pastor and he'll give you the answers. It should be, anybody in this church should be able to tell you, here's how you connect to Jesus. If you're not a Christian, here's how you connect to Jesus. So that's where, we have to, once you become an adult, you've got to build it into yourself. That's why, this book is written, not because, this dad failed to instruct his son, but because he did instruct his son. Once his son is grown up, it's like, go further. Gain more. I gained some wisdom, you gain even more. And that's the goal here, building a wise culture where young people can just associate. When I look back on my childhood and the church that I went to, I didn't have anybody who came to me and said, now I'm going to disciple you as a Christian, and just get you all the foundations. But I'm amazed at how much I learned just by watching the people around me, watching how they did things, watching how they talked to each other. I think I've even shared, our church in Memphis where I grew up was about 700 people. And so communion was a pretty, I think there was like 6 different aisles and things, it was a pretty intricate thing. And when they would do communion, it was almost like a parade. They would come from the back and march down the aisle and line up, and then every person would go to the exact right spot. As you're a kid, you're like, this is amazing. Like, how do they do that? How do you know where you're supposed to go? I asked my parents, how does that person know where they're supposed to go? And when I became 13, I was, and I'd been baptized, I was invited to help serve communion. And I was like, I don't, and so like they took me, there was a back room where they all assembled, and there was a chart there. And they said, okay, see this is you right here. You're number 6 in line here. You go down this aisle. That's all you have to do. And then I started doing it. It's like, it makes perfect sense. You just learn those. It's not like somebody sat me down and gave me the instructional program for how to do it. You just learn it by watching, and then somebody comes along beside you, and then suddenly it makes sense. And I think that's what life is intended to be here, is instruction from the people around you. All right, let's move on to the next. So you could think of this as verses 1 through 9 are how to get going in wisdom. And the way that you get going in wisdom is by association with wise people. And once you've exhausted that avenue, getting wisdom into yourself, however you have to, whatever it costs. Okay, so verses 10 through 19 then are how do you keep going in wisdom? Starting in verse 10. Listen, my son, accept what I say, and the years of your life will be many. I will instruct you in the way of wisdom and lead you along straight paths. When you walk, your steps will not be hampered. When you run, you will not stumble. Hold on to instruction. Do not let it go. Guard it well, for it is your life. Do not set your foot on the path of the wicked, or walk in the way of evildoers. Avoid it. Do not travel on it. Turn from it and go your own way. And go on your way, for they cannot rest until they do evil. They are robbed of sleep till they make someone stumble. They eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. But the way of the wicked is like deep darkness. They do not know what makes them stumble. Now, I just want you to notice in those verses the use of words like path and way. So this is something that you're walking in. And what I'm trying to get you to see is that, life, we talk a lot about life as a journey, I guess. But, that means there is no quick fix. So, like, part of what I'm saying is, at one level, I want you to understand, like, don't write your congressman about the level of suicide. This is not a federal level fix. That's going, there is no command issued from on high that's going to fix this problem. This has to be at the grassroots level of how you and I live our lives and how we impact the people around us. So this is it's a long-term, like a path is a long-term thing. A path is not the same thing as like a decision or a choice. It is a daily choice to keep going. If you've ever done any hiking, maybe when you were younger, you walk down a path and it keeps getting longer and longer, and at some point you have to decide, this may not be the path that I want to be on. And you have to make a decision to either go a different way or to turn back. That's the nature of paths. You have to kind of travel down them, and you just kind of keep going until you either turn back or go a different direction. But there's no quick fix that allows you to be transported Now, I know this analogy is a little weak because you can take a helicopter to the end of the path, but, generally speaking, you've got to walk the path. You can't just transport from one end to the other and decide whether or not it's a good path. You have to walk it. The other thing I hope you'll notice here is the addictive nature of evil. Were you struck by that language? Like they can't sleep until they make somebody stumble. To me, that's such a funny way to say it. That you get this picture, this evil person saying, I just can't settle down until I mess somebody up somewhere. It's it comes across as the language of like drugs and alcohol. Until I do something evil, I can't sleep. Man, that, you just think about the nature. I mean, I know we talk a lot about drugs and alcohol as being this way, but violence is this way, gambling is this way, unrestrained sexuality is this way. It is addictive. And it addicts you to the point of destruction in your life. And so the writer of Proverbs is just saying, just don't get on that path. Like, just don't start. And again, we just, the society that we live in lacks so much wisdom that we just can't find the moral courage to say to young people, just don't start on that path. Just don't drink. Just don't do drugs. Just don't have sex until you're married. Because we just can't imagine that they're ever going to be able to do that. And so our only fix is now after the fact of, well, once you're in trouble, here's an 800 number. Call this number. And they'll help you. That's the only fix we have now. And man, we desperately need Christians with the courage to speak to the people around them, to say there is good reason why God teaches us to live this way. And again, this, just to trumpet the studies that show over and over and over again, the happiest people in this world are the people who get married and stay married and live their lives at the very least, maybe not as Christians, but at least according to the basic morality of the Christian faith. That's where happiness, that's where we thrive as human beings. It is just, I mentioned to the elders, I was watched this show on Disney, which is, it's sort of ironic because Disney owns National Geographic. You didn't know that. So the National Geographic documentaries are on the Disney Channel. So when I say I was watching the Disney Channel, I'm not watching Bambi. But I was watching a show called Criminal Underworld, and it's just a documentary about some of the really big, scary things like illegal guns. There are places apparently in like the Philippines is one major spot where they basically build guns that don't have serial numbers and then ship them to the United States. And just watching, the level of corruption, the level of greed, the level of destructiveness, and honestly, the devotion to doing evil. Like, you might think to yourself, oh, the criminals are just living this easy life. I mean, these guys were like working hard at doing these evil things. And so, it is like they just can't stop. And I watched the first two. The first one was about weapons, and the second one is about sex. And it was like, the sex trade and all this stuff. And it is profound to see how young people get trapped. Like there was two, they did an interview. So just to kind of give you the background of this, when a gun that has a serial number is used for a murder, it gets put into a database. And if that gun is sold to somebody else, this is how criminals think about this. If a gun is used to commit 2 murders and then somebody sells you that gun and you commit a crime and you get caught, there's a good chance that you're going to go to jail for Not just your crime, but the 2 other crimes that you didn't commit. So they call it a dirty gun at that point. They don't want to use it. They want a clean gun. And so once a gun is a dirty gun, they pack them all up and they ship them to Guatemala, where my wife is going in about 2 weeks. So now, anxiety level back up again. So, but the tragedy of this. So there's basically, now this gun doesn't have a paper trail connected to any murders, and it goes to these Guatemalan gangs, and they give these guns to teenagers who commit the crimes that, when a gang wants to kill somebody, they send a 14-year-old to do it. And so they talk to one of these 14-year-old assassins, basically. And he said, I want to get out, but they'll kill me if I get out. And if I run away, they know where my family lives. They'll kill my family. And you just see the enslaving nature of evil. And so, as powerless as we might feel, this is what Proverbs is saying. Your power in this is to take the wisdom that is in your life and pour it into the lives of young people around you. Find some way to have the awkward conversation. Say to them, just forget about drugs. Just don't do that. Just keep them off those paths, because those paths always lead to destruction. And of course, the beautiful passage here, this is verse 18. The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. The best life you're going to live is a life of righteousness. We need people who will say that to people, younger people as well as older people. The best life you're going to experience is a life of righteousness. Honestly, we need to get the word righteousness back into public vocabulary, because the words that we have today aren't working very well. So, all right, questions or comments, or we're going to just finish the last little section here in just a minute. So, verses 20 through 27. So we talked about how to get going in wisdom. That is, you enter into the tradition. If you're a young person, you connect to an older person who is wise. If you're an older person, you just connect to the tradition of wisdom through reading, through learning. You just commit yourself. No matter what it costs, I'm going to get wisdom. How do you keep going in wisdom? You live the life of a wise person, so that you're going down paths of righteousness, and you are encouraging, especially the younger people in your life, to go the way that you are going. I had some really good parents, but one of the things that they used some of the phrases I think that they were taught, and one that was not particularly good is, do what I say, not what I do. That's not wisdom. Not wisdom. It should be, a wise person says, do what I do. You think about this, the old adage, you have somebody watch you do something, and then you watch them do it, and then you let them do it. They have to learn it themselves. In the same way, we need to say to our young people, I'm walking in this path of wisdom, follow me in it. Walk with me. So number 3 then is how not to get lost. Once you're walking the path of wisdom, how do you not get lost? Starting now in verse 20. My son, pay attention to what I say. Turn your ear to my words. Do not let them out of your sight. Keep them within your heart. For they are life to those who find them, and health to one's whole body. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Keep your mouth free of perversity. Keep corrupt talk far from your lips. Let your eyes look straight ahead. Fix your gaze directly before you. Give careful thought to the paths for your feet, and be steadfast in all your ways. Do not turn to the right or to the left. Keep your foot from evil. So do you get the idea? It's the whole body. Guard your heart. That's the core of who you are. The word heart is most often used of the inner person, who you really are on the inside. Guard your heart, for everything you do flows out of your heart. How you live is a direct reflection of your desires. And so guard your heart above all things. That doesn't mean, by the way, like never let yourself be exposed to anything going on around, like, live in some kind of little bubble. It means, what do you let inside of you as an authority? Like there are lots of, maybe here's an example of this. Like for me, alcoholism is really not much of a temptation because I just do not like the taste of alcohol. And so you could, line up, like I have seriously, because everybody was so excited about drinking, I thought, I just got to at least try this to see what it tastes like. And every one I've ever tasted, I thought, man, this tastes like medicine. It's wine is just grape juice that burns your throat. What is that about? Like I was really disappointed when I tried wine and it didn't taste like grape juice. It's like, oh, this is horrible. So it is just not a temptation for me. So I am a teetotaler, not by conviction, but just because I just can't stand the taste of it. Even when I was a teenager and I was like trying to fit in with my friends and get drunk, it was just, I could barely hold down enough alcohol to get a slight buzz. It was like more than one or two drinks and it was on the way back up, it was, I just couldn't stand it. So that's just not a temptation for me. But the issue is when you let in something in your heart. For instance, drinking is not the issue. It is the belief that here is how I manage my stress. That belief is what actually puts you into danger. Or here is how I fit in with my friends by doing this. That's the belief that puts you. So it's not an issue of, do you hide in a little bubble so that you never have any interaction with anybody who's not a really strong Christian? That's not the issue. The issue is, what do you let inside of your heart that you say, I obey this teaching. I listen to this. That's what's really important. But you see this well. Your eyes, your feet, your mouth. I love that. Don't let perversity in your mouth. Like, isn't it? It's just, you understand that bad words and filthy speech don't start here. They start here, right? So you understand that's what's actually going. It's not saying, don't let these things into your life. But the way that you do that, it starts here. Like, the words that you use are gonna be here, but stop them here. And then eventually, if you stop them here, they'll stop being dominant here. And I think that's the reality that we so often miss. I joke around that when I hit my thumb with a hammer, there are all kinds of words that go through my mind, but that's the reality. The goal is I don't want them coming out of my mouth. Because if I keep them from coming out of my mouth, number one, they're not going to hurt the people around me or influence the people around me. But number two, it's kind of like taking a plant out of the sunshine. The more you leave it in the sunshine, it's going to thrive. But if you take it out of the light, that plant is going to wither. And that's the teaching of Proverbs, is that the more you let things out of your life, they may have gotten into your heart and mind, but the more you let them out in your practice, the more they will thrive. The more you keep them out. Shut my mouth. And eventually those things wither and die. To give you a very blunt example, I had a man years ago in a church that I was pastoring who came to me. His wife had found out he had a severe addiction to pornography. And he's like, what do I, he had started looking at pornography as a very young man. It had been, obviously when the internet stuff came out, it became so much more available. It was ruling his life. And he said, so what do I do? And I said, okay, step one is have your wife put a password. So I asked him the question. I said, do you look at stuff at work or at home? He said, never do it at work. It's only at home. I said, okay. Have your wife change the password on the internet. And the only way you get on the internet is in her presence. And he was like, I'm a grown-up. And I said, well, I know you're a grown-up, but you're a grown-up who's addicted to this. Yeah. And, sure enough, that became the starting point. Just cutting, when Jesus says, if your eye causes you to sin, gouge it out. If we were to take that literally, there would be a lot more blind Christians in the world. So it's not a literal thing. What he is saying is, if there is a point of temptation that you are really weak for, find a way to cut that off so that it's hard for you to do it. And as you make it hard for you to do it, it will wither that thing in your life to the point that it doesn't become as nearly as strong as a temptation in your life. Simple reality is, the less, if you're addicted to pornography, the less you look at it, the less you will become addicted. It will become weaker in your life. And that's what this is saying. When you cut these things off, when you cut, if your thing is you walk down the wrong path, stop it at your feet. If you say the words come out of your mouth, stop it at your mouth. When you do that, it weakens it in your life. So I think that's what's going on here. So the way we keep from getting lost, this again, that guard your heart passage is a very popular passage, but when you read the whole section, you realize it's not just guard your heart, it's guard all aspects of your life. Guard your mouth, guard your eyes, guard your feet, guard your heart. As you do those things, it will keep you on the right path, but it will weaken the temptation to go down the wrong path. Does that make sense? Is that all crystal clear? All right, I think that's all we have for this morning. Anybody have a question, comment?
I have a comment. I enjoyed this very much and I learned a lot, but on the lighter side, I would like to say, point out the fact that wisdom is she.
I think it's time for us to just pray. That wisdom is she, not he. Yes, ma'am.
I need to go to the restroom.
Sure, go ahead. Let me pray, we'll be done. Lord, we thank you for this day, and we pray, God, that you would be with us during the week. Lord, help us to grow in wisdom, and help us to value wisdom to such an extent that we would want to get it into our hearts, no matter what the cost. In Jesus' name, amen.
That was good.